NASCAR champion Kyle Busch, his family revealing he died from severe pneumonia that then progressed into sepsis.
There are moments in sports that stop everything. Not just a race. Not just a season. Everything. The kind of moments where you find yourself staring at your phone, reading the same sentence 4 times, because your brain simply refuses to process what your eyes are telling it. May 21, 2026 was one of those moments. Kyle Busch, 2-time Cup Series champion, the most prolific winner in the history of NASCAR's lower series, the man who spent 2 decades being both the most hated and most respected driver in the garage, was gone at 41 years old. And the racing world had no idea how to breathe. But in the hours and days that followed, it was Dale Earnhardt Jr. who stepped forward and said the things that mattered most. The things that cut through all the shock and grief and disbelief. Dale Jr. did not just offer condolences. He pulled back a curtain that very few people even knew existed, and what he revealed changed how an entire fan base understood the final chapter of Kyle Busch's life. If you want to understand why this story hit the NASCAR community so differently than any other loss in recent memory, you need to understand what Dale Jr. said, and why he was the one person uniquely positioned to say it. Before you can appreciate what Dale Earnhardt Jr. revealed, you have to understand what existed between these two men before they found their way to friendship. Because calling it a rivalry almost undersells it. From roughly 2007 through the better part of a decade, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Kyle Busch had one of the most genuinely hostile relationships in the NASCAR garage. It was not manufactured tension for TV cameras. It was real, it ran deep, and it had real roots. The friction between them came to a boiling point at Richmond International Raceway in 2007, when Kyle made a move on Earnhardt that sparked outrage across the NASCAR fan base. But the personal tension between them did not start or end on the racetrack. When Rick Hendrick made the decision to release Kyle Busch from Hendrick Motorsports following that season and bring Dale Earnhardt Jr. in to take his place, it added a layer to their history that went far beyond bumpers and painted sheet metal. Kyle Busch lost one of the premier rides in all of NASCAR. Dale Jr. gained it. That kind of thing does not just get shrugged off at the next drivers' meeting. 4 years, they coexisted in the NASCAR garage with the kind of carefully maintained distance that professionals maintain when they genuinely cannot stand each other but understand they have to share the same workspace. Fans on both sides treated their tension as part of the sport's identity. The boos that followed Kyle Busch everywhere he raced were, in no small part, amplified by the fact that Dale Earnhardt Jr. was the sport's most beloved figure. If you loved Dale Jr., there was a good chance you had complicated feelings about Kyle Busch. That dynamic ran through NASCAR for years. And then something changed. Something quiet, something that happened behind closed doors, something that the public never fully saw coming. And it was Kyle who started it. After Kyle Busch passed away on May 21st, Dale Earnhardt Jr. posted a tribute on X that stopped the racing world cold. Not because it was long. Not because it was poetic. But because of what it revealed. Dale wrote that he and Kyle had, in his words, a really challenging existence for many years. He then said something that clearly meant a great deal to him. It was Kyle who made the first move toward fixing it. According to Dale Jr., Kyle Busch walked into his motorhome one day and opened up a conversation about how each of them managed their racing teams. It sounds simple on the surface. 2 men talking about the business side of the sport. But that is not what that conversation actually was. What it actually was one man with enough courage and enough self-awareness to walk through a door that neither of them had been willing to open for the better part of a decade. Kyle Busch, the man that racing culture had cast as the villain, the driver who seemed to revel in making enemies, he was the one who decided enough was enough. Dale Jr. made clear that he had been eager to improve things between them, but that it was Kyle who made it possible. That distinction matters enormously. It tells you something about who Kyle Busch really was beneath the persona. The swagger, the confidence, the bluntness that made him so polarizing. Those same traits apparently included the ability to walk up to someone he had genuinely clashed with and say something like, "Let's try this differently." What followed, according to Earnhardt, was a friendship that kept growing. The two of them actually did media together, sitting across from each other and laughing about some of the things they had put each other through over the years. Think about what that requires. To sit across from someone, look them in the eye, and laugh at the fact that you once made each other miserable. That is not something 2 people do unless they have genuinely reached a different place. Whatever happened between Kyle Busch and Dale Earnhardt Jr. in those final years of Kyle's life was real. It was earned. And it was still growing. Here is where Dale Jr.'s tribute became something that nobody in the racing world was prepared to feel. After describing how far their relationship had come, Dale Earnhardt Jr. shared a detail about the future they had been building together. A detail so specific, so alive with possibility, that it made the loss hit in an entirely different way. The two of them had been talking about Kyle driving one of Dale's late model cars in the Cars Tour race at North Wilkesboro Speedway that coming July 17th. Not just talking about it casually, they had made an actual plan. Kyle Busch was supposed to show up at the Junior Motorsports shop on Thursday, May 29th, to get his seat fitted. Dale Jr. later revealed on his podcast that they had been texting about it the very day before Kyle collapsed. He said he was texting with Kyle about getting together that Thursday to bring his seat to the shop, because they had agreed Kyle was going to race their car at North Wilkesboro. Those are not the words of two men who were just casually tossing an idea around. That was a plan. That was a date on the calendar. And Kyle Busch, according to Dale Jr., was excited about it in a way that was genuinely touching. Dale wrote that Kyle actually laughed over the idea of his fans and Junior Motorsports fans having to cheer for the same driver in the same race. Think about what that image means. Kyle Busch, the driver who spent his entire career as the guy half the grandstands were booing, sitting there and finding it genuinely funny and exciting that his fans and Dale's fans would have to cheer together for one afternoon. That is a man who had fully made peace with his own history and was looking forward to something new. Kyle Busch died on May 21, 2026. The seat fitting was scheduled for May 29th. 8 days. 8 days separated one of the greatest potential feel-good stories in modern NASCAR history from the reality of what actually happened. They were texting about seat fittings while bacterial pneumonia was silently dismantling his body from the inside. That is the part that does not let you go. The medical truth of Kyle Busch's final weeks only became fully clear after his death. His family, through a statement released by his company, confirmed that severe pneumonia had progressed into sepsis, resulting in rapid and overwhelming complications. His death certificate, obtained by multiple news organizations, revealed that Kyle had been experiencing symptoms of bacterial pneumonia for days to weeks before sepsis set in. He died from hemorrhagic shock and disseminated intravascular coagulation, the body's extreme, catastrophic response to an infection it could no longer contain. What makes this timeline so haunting is that it unfolded right there in public, and nobody, including Kyle himself, it seems, fully understood what was building inside him. On May 10th, during the Cup Series race at Watkins Glen, Kyle got on his radio mid-race and asked his team to find a specific doctor at Ortho Carolina. He said he needed a shot after the race. His spotter asked whether he wanted the doctor at the car or at his motorhome. Kyle chose the motorhome. The Fox Sports broadcast picked up the transmission and Mike Joy explained it matter-of-factly. Kyle had been fighting a sinus cold, and the elevation changes and high G-forces of a road course made head pressure exponentially worse. That was all it seemed to be. He finished 8th, his best Cup result of the entire 2026 season, and everyone moved on. But bacterial pneumonia does not move on. It builds. 5 days later, on May 15th, Kyle Busch drove to Dover Motor Speedway and put on one of the most dominant Truck Series performances of his legendary career. He qualified on pole, swept both stages, led 147 of 200 laps, and crossed the finish line more than 3 seconds ahead of Ty Majeski for his 69th career Truck Series victory, a record that may stand for the rest of NASCAR's existence. When Fox Sports reporter Amanda Busick asked him why winning never gets old, Kyle gave an answer that now carries a weight it was never meant to carry. He said you take whatever you can get because you never know when the last one is going to be, so cherish them all. He said it with a smile. He said it the way a man says it when he has been grinding through a tough stretch and is just grateful to be back in victory lane. The day after that Dover win, Kyle spoke to reporters again and admitted he still was not feeling great. He said the cough from the previous week had been pretty substantial and that he still was not at his best. Drivers say things like that. Nobody panics. Drivers race through illness all the time. Brad Keselowski would later say that he had noticed Kyle was not feeling well, but that seeing him win the truck race had honestly erased his concern. That is the culture of professional racing. You show up, you race, you push through. The fear of being replaced by someone who is not sick is real, and every driver in that garage understands it. On Monday, May 18th, Kyle posted a carousel of photos on Instagram for his son Brexton's 11th birthday. He wrote about how proud he and his wife Samantha were of who Brexton was becoming and that there was no limit to what he could accomplish. That post is still on his Instagram. It was the last thing he ever posted to social media. 3 days before he died, he was a father writing about his son with joy. The following Tuesday, Kyle and Brexton drove to Durham, North Carolina for the grand opening of an Andretti indoor karting facility. Mario Andretti was there in person telling stories. Witnesses who were present described seeing Kyle and Brexton playing arcade games together, laughing, completely present in the moment. One man said he did not want to interrupt them because the moment felt too special to intrude on. Mario Andretti later pulled out his phone at Indianapolis Motor Speedway and showed reporters a video of Kyle smiling and shaking his hand at that event. Andretti called it the shock of his life. Kyle Busch was at an arcade with his kid on Tuesday. He was texting Dale Earnhardt Jr. about seat fittings that same day. On Wednesday, May 20th, Kyle drove to the General Motors Charlotte Technical Center in Concord, North Carolina for routine simulator work. It was a completely normal part of his week. Chevrolet Cup teams use that facility constantly. There was nothing unusual about being there on a Wednesday afternoon in May. At approximately 5:30 in the evening, someone at the facility called 911. The audio of that call, later released by the Cabarrus County Sheriff's Office, described a man experiencing shortness of breath, feeling extremely hot, believing he was going to pass out, and coughing up blood.